Yes?
Yes, we're ready to go.
Great, thank you. I'd like to welcome you to the Billings Public School Board of Trustees emergency meeting. Would you please rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get started in the meeting, I really appreciate the work of the folks affiliated with School District 2. Brandon, I would like to thank you for setting up these virtual meetings. It's been a lot of time and commitment on your part, and you've done a really wonderful job. I would like to really thank the board for their commitment and their support, Superintendent Upham for his steadfast leadership, the administration and their staff for the patience and dedication, and our attorneys who are providing guidance for us as we navigate through the unknowns. I want you to know from the depth of my heart, you are all valued and an integral part of the education of our students and the success of School District 2. Before we move into the agenda items, I would like to turn it over to Craig Van Nuys so that he can explain how we will be obtaining comments from the public today. So Craig, I'll pass that on to you, please.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So for any members of the public that would like to make a comment during today's meeting, you can go to the billingschools.org website. And as soon as you get to the homepage of that website, you'll see a pop-up, and that'll talk about the special board meeting this evening at 5:30 on Facebook Live. And about halfway down the pop-up, there's a link to a Google Doc, and that Google document it resembles our public participant form we typically have at a regular board meeting. And so anyone who wants to leave a comment would fill out that form. They would need to make sure they include a name and a valid address. And once they submit that form, it will come to me. And what we've done is we've put public comment at the end of tonight's meeting. So prior to us recessing for the evening, I'll take an opportunity to read public comments at that time. If you happen to go to the website and you don't see that pop up, you can also click on the school board link in the menu, and that pop up will show up at that link as well. So that's the process for getting public comments submitted for this meeting.
Thank you very much. The first item on the agenda, next item on the agenda is the declaration of an unforeseen emergency. And this is really the primary reason that we are here tonight. And I'll read through the executive summary for the record. The meeting is called pursuant to MCA 20-3-322-3, which provides special meetings of the trustees may be called by the presiding officer or any two members of the trustees by giving each member a 48-hour written notice of the meeting, except that the 48-hour notice is waived in an unforeseen emergency or to consider a violation of student code of conduct as defined in accordance with district policy within a week of graduation. An unforeseen emergency is defined in law as a storm, fire, explosion, community disaster, insurrection, act of God, or other unforeseen destruction or impairment of school district property that affects the health and safety of students, trustees, or district employees, or the educational functions of the district. I have determined that the outbreak of COVID-19 is sufficiently akin to a community disaster that I am permitted to call this meeting. The action item before us is as follows. Board consideration of current circumstances related to COVID-19 for possible declaration of unforeseen emergency pursuant to 20-9-801 through 20-9-806 Montana Code annotated. And with that, I will turn it over to Superintendent Upham to explain that information more thoroughly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This meeting is in response to legal counsel and also advice from MTSBA. This morning, there was a COVID conference that was hosted by the Office of Public Instruction, primarily about some concern or confusion about the possibility of maybe having to make up the days. According to Governor Bullock's latest press release at 4:15 or 4:30 today, it appears that the funding sources will stay intact and maintain where they are. There was just some confusion about some of that. And so in discussing those concerns today on the COVID state call, areas that were discussed were issues about transportation, what that means. I'm assuming just in my response that I said earlier with Governor Bullock that funding sources will stay intact. Also, the discussion of 20-9-311 aggregate hours attached to proficiency. Students meeting proficiency, not meeting proficiency. That was a topic that was discussed. The flexibility for special ed support. The special ed representative from Office of Public Instruction shared his thoughts on what districts can do to work with special ed students. The testing day with extensions, with the ACT and the SBAC and the state sanctioned sciences. You also see on our agenda the 3 areas of resources from the OPI, opi.mt.gov, and then the OPI COVID-19 at mt.gov, and then mt-pec.org is the other piece. The main reason for the meeting today was to, by our legal counsel, was to take the action that protects us with aggregate hours and the amount of days or hours that's required to be in school. And so this allows us flexibility and support in the case that something would come about where we would have to make the time up. Again, I say I'm not concerned as a superintendent. I think the governor at this point in time clarified a lot of that. So the reason for this meeting was to give us support protection of an unforeseen emergency, which allows us to have flexibility with our hours, which in the end allows us the flexibility with funding.
Thank you. So what comes from that then is the suggested action, which is the motion for the Board of Trustees of Billings Public School to declare an unforeseen emergency in accordance with sections 20-9-801 through 20-9-806 MCA due to the community and school health concerns related to COVID-19 and authorize administration to take necessary steps to execute this declaration and inform the public and government agencies of this declaration. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And was that Joe Raffiani? Motion by
Yes,
Joe
ma'am.
Raffiani. Thank you. And a second?
I'll second it.
And a second by Jana Hafer. Thank you. Is there further discussion from the board? Joe?
Just to point out, in case all of us didn't see this, or for the public writ large, we could have done this via email, and we're doing it as an open meeting that people actually do get a chance to see and participate in through the public comment. And the notice wasn't required under 20-3-322 any more than we provided. That is because of the state of the unforeseen emergency. Everyone understands on the board that's voting in either for or against this that this is necessary for us to avoid being penalized for shortfalls regarding the aggregate hours, as was discussed, but it's also going to get us an extra day of time that we don't have to make up when and if the decision on how this is going to get made up is made. So I just wanted to say that, not just for the trustees voting, but for the public at large too.
Thank you, Joe. Are there any other comments or questions?
A question.
Question by Russ?
And maybe Greg, you already said this. As far as funding, what does this provide us in the source of funding?
Trustee Hall, it provides us added insurance, if you will, in the case that there would be questions to funding. But as I said in the governor's press conference today, he referenced that all funding would stay in place for the 2 weeks. There was some confusion about the maybe possibly making up time or extending the time. And that's why the legal counsel advised and MTSBA advised to enact the unforeseen emergency.
Are there additional questions?
So if we did have to make up the time, and if we are paying people right now during these 2 weeks, we're paying all staff, right, including hourly. If we had to make these 2 weeks up in the future, we have not budgeted for that. So does this emergency would help us if we have to pay for 2 weeks that we did not plan for. Is that correct?
It could be a variety of scenarios, but it's my understanding that that is why we are doing that, as you explained.
And we have our legal counsel on. Jeff Weldon, do you have anything that you would like to add?
You know, under normal circumstances, we use this statute because we have snow days, right? A couple, 3 snow days, maybe a week out in the middle of the winter. And this statute gives the district flexibility concerning making up time. Russ, to answer your question, we simply don't know. There's a lot of people in Montana and around the country trying to put all these different pieces together and imagine different scenarios. So really what I think we're trying to do at this point is give the district as much flexibility as possible going forward. I fully expect various authorities, including the governor, perhaps ultimately the legislature, to change things that will allow us to either, backfill funding, give additional funding, change the requirements as far as student attendance. Who knows? But really what we're attempting to do at this point is provide as much flexibility to the district as possible. The other thing that I think is important is we're trying to be consistent. People in Helena are trying to put together a plan that makes sense for labor, makes sense for school boards, makes sense for the governors, so on and so forth, that we're just trying to be consistent. At least that's the message that I'm hearing and that we're trying to advise our clients on is we're in this together. Let's figure out a course forward together. And so far, this is the second day. I can't promise you what tomorrow will be like. It's going to be interesting for sure.
Does anyone have any further questions or comments of our superintendent or our attorney?
Greta, Jana here. I have a question. If we make this declaration, does it only cover the 2 weeks that we are currently dealing with, or does this have a potential to go on indefinitely? What is the time frame?
Jeff, will you take that question?
There's no time limit in the motion that is before you in the agenda. So I would say that certainly it covers the 2 weeks that we're facing right now under the governor's declaration, but there's no limit to the emergency that the board is recognizing and declaring. I would perhaps hope that in 2 weeks' time we could declare the emergency finished, but I'm certainly not going to hold my breath.
Trustee Hafer, to follow up on that, the idea behind this is procedural, as Mr. Weldon has alluded to. You bring up a great point, and I brought this up in the COVID meeting today. At the end of 2 weeks, I assume, in talking with Mr. Felton that last night and him sharing his thoughts, that we will continue to see school closures to some form. We could have several of our schools closed for a period of time, depending on tests that come back positive. So to ensure that we have done everything we can as far as the letter of the law and by procedure, this allows us to at least have some authority over some unknowns that we don't know, because I fully expect and anticipate that we will have some school closures from potential tests, positive tests moving forward.
Any other questions?
This is ancillary, I think, to the topic for this meeting, but something I just haven't seen or read or needed clarified. Superintendent Upham, can you tell me, my understanding is the governor closed schools through the 27th. The 30th for our district was supposed to be a PIR day. Has there been a decision made about that yet?
Yes, I made the recommendation that we return to school on that day and that we work the PIR out in another format. We do want to be respectful of our community. I greatly appreciate your question, but we know that families have childcare. We know that all those things are going on, and we're willing to adjust to that. So thank you.
Anyone else?
I do have another question. So
Russ?
we're meeting for this emergency, to make an emergency declaration. Is it possible that we will do something similar to this in the future? It sounds like this emergency declaration would continue until we remove the emergency declaration, but would there be an opportunity or maybe a need for further meetings like this? Do we know?
Jeff, can you answer that?
Yeah, almost certainly we'll have meetings. In fact, kind of jumping ahead, Madam Chair, one of the things that I recommended that we do is the board not conclude or adjourn its meeting tonight, but recess it to a time certain, so that a couple of things can happen. One is the public is made aware of when the board is actually going to meet. You as trustees can plan ahead for that as well. So we've used this in the past, this method of calling for recess, continuing the meeting to a time in the future, rather than have to go through the exercise of posting a new meeting 48 hours in advance. This, as you saw in your agenda, you've already got a time certain that you'll be meeting. If there's to be board action at that particular point, we'll provide as much notice to the public and to the board ahead of time as possible. But it's also likely or possible that that time would be used to allow the superintendent or other staff people or the health officers to communicate information to the board and then the public who is tuning into this particular kind of meeting. It just seems to me that a school board meeting that is being broadcast that people can tune into is a good opportunity to provide information, give updates, and if necessary, have board action going forward. So that's why you'll see that I recommend you don't adjourn your meeting, but recess it and reconvene Thursday at 5:30. If nothing has to take place, then nothing will take place, but at least we've got the time designated and set aside. Does that answer your question, Russ?
Russ, did that answer your question?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any others? We have a motion and a second, and we have had discussion. So I will now do a roll call vote, and Brian Yates did join us. So hi, Brian, thanks for being here. I will start answer in yay or nay. I will start with Brian. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and I will take a roll call or nay, and I will start Brian Yates. I will start with someone else. How about Russ?
Yay.
Raffiani.
Yay.
Jennifer Hoffman. Is Jen still on?
Yay.
Yay. Thank you. Tanya. I know Tanya's on because I can see her. Oh, Brian Yates. Yay. Yay. Thanks, Tanya. Jana.
Yay.
And Brian said he said I couldn't hear him. But he votes yes. And the chair votes yes. So the motion passes unanimously. So that brings us on to the next item on the agenda, and it was the summary of the COVID conference call with the state entities. And Greg talked a little bit about it. I listened to that meeting as well, and it was hosted by OPI, and there were representatives from the governor's office, from Steve Daines' office, from John Tester's office. The MT-PEC partners were there, and so were a number of superintendents across the state. It's something that they are going to continue to provide so that there's information disseminated and question and answers are provided. Greg, did you have anything else to add to that meeting? I thought they were going to be providing answers to the questions that were asked. Will that be on the OPI's website?
Madam Chair, it's my understanding that they were going to answer in that format on frequently asked questions, that and also the School Administrators of Montana COVID website. So I would look in both places for responses to frequently asked questions.
Okay, so SAM is also going to have a website, a portion of their website dedicated to the COVID-19 frequently asked questions?
That is correct.
Okay. So this was presented for information only, and as we have additional information that is relevant, we will keep the board informed on that. So then that brings us up to the communication from the public. So Craig, what do we have from our public?
Okay, Madam Chair. So I just got a third comment, and I'm just getting that screened here. Okay, so I'll start with the comment number 1. This is from Aaron Lee at 2901 Monad. The comment is, I would just like to know if the schools will be letting students retrieve items from school that they left in their lockers that they may need for lessons done online. Things like textbooks, calculators, homework they may have left, specific art supplies, etc. Second comment is from Autumn Holman at 717 Matson Lane. The comment is, I understand there are many unknowns at this time. However, I would like to be filled in on the best case, worst case scenario regarding graduation on May 24th for high school seniors. I have a student graduating. Also, are we switching to online classrooms if the break lasts longer than the original 2 weeks? What can we expect worst case? Thank you for all you do. And the third comment is from Brandy Goodnight at 22 Heartland Street North. Will there be an option to do online classes, and could this continue for the rest of the school year? Would this also make it to where there will not be days to be made up at the end of the year? That's it for public comment, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate that. Greg, are you in the process of putting together frequently asked questions from our community?
Yes, we are, Madam Chair.
Okay. Well, I'm sure you'll include some of those answers to some of those questions as well. Thank you. And that brings us to the last agenda item. And as Jeff alluded to, we're not going to adjourn the item, but we're going to recess. And instead of recessing the meetings to reconvene at 5:30 on Thursday, the board will continue to use Zoom and will stream the meeting on Facebook. We want to continue to provide public information and as much access to our meetings as we possibly can. We'll continue to use the district's website to post information, and if the board is called upon to act on something, we'll do our best to post it on the website as soon as possible. Jeff visited a little bit about why you recess instead of reconvening another meeting. The point that in order to, unless it's an emergency meeting like we had today, and the rationale for an emergency meeting, we have to give 48 hours notice. And so this, as a continuation, just enables us to let the public know that at 5:30 on Thursday, we will plan to reconvene. There are any number of things that may come up in the interim and would want to be shared with our community. Jeff, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, yes, Madam Chair. One, I just want to make sure that people understand that the reason we're doing this is to provide as much notice to the board and the public as possible ahead of time, so people can plan on when to tune in. The other thing I want to mention, because when people do submit their public comments, I notice they're in the form of questions, and it may be confusing and frustrating if they don't get answers to those questions in this format. And that reason is that that's an opportunity for the public to express their opinion or provide comment to the board, but the board doesn't respond to those questions at that time. I would think that most questions would be attended to through administration or frequently asked question things to be distributed out. But I just want to make that point that it is not the board's practice or any practice of any board in Montana to respond to the public comment or public questions submitted at the time. So I don't want people to be frustrated when they don't get an answer back immediately.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that. Now, as I understand it, we don't need to have a vote to recess the meeting. I simply move the meeting to recess and to reconvene Thursday at 5:30 through a video conferencing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you to the board and the staff for their attendance and participation in this call. So look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Thanks so much.